Kevin Doyle, Pascal Donohoe is gone as Minister for Finance. A surprise, not a shock.
I think the day of the week maybe is a surprise, Fionnán, but in the context of, are we shocked that he is stepping down from government? Are we shocked that he is leaving the Dáil? Are we shocked that he's got a fierce big job? No, because we have been talking about this moment for years. Before the last general election, there was speculation that there was a big job in the IMF that he wanted. That was reported in the Financial Times and all the big media organisations that cover those things and have the inside track on those things. That job didn't come to pass for him at the time. It was kind of seen that he missed out. He has been linked to various jobs with the European Central Bank. He's been linked to the World Economic Forum. So for several years now, Pascal has kind of shunned opportunities to perhaps have a go at becoming Taoiseach or lining up that he could become Taoiseach. And every time he has let that pass. When Leo Varadkar ran, he let it pass when Simon Harris went in. There have been moments where Simon Harris has been weak and people have said, would Pascal not step into the breach? He didn't do that. So no, he has bided his time and now he has got the fierce big job.
OK, this is a significant departure on multiple levels. First off, as Minister for Finance, crucial role within the government and also a stabilising position also within the government.
Well, he doesn't have the nickname Prudent Pascal for nothing. So he is, you could say outside of Micheál Martin, the most experienced politician in that government, which at times has been troubled, has seemed to have difficulty making proper decisions that it won't U-turn on or to finding a kind of a meaning for itself at time. And within that, everybody knew, out of all of those ministers, they knew where Pascal Donohoe stood. And we could debate his economics and whether he was actually that prudent or not. But the reality is he's a TD since 2011. He was in Dublin City Council before that. But for most of his time in Leinster House, he became the Minister for the EU in 2013. A year later, he becomes the Minister for Transport. 2 years later, he moves up to the Department of Public Expenditure and becomes kind of pretty much the apprentice for Michael Noonan. And he is kind of cut from that same cloth of Michael Noonan in that over the past decade, he has kind of become that sage figure in government, but also in Fine Gael. When there's troubled times in Fine Gael, roll out Pascal, put Pascal on Morning Ireland or Pat Kenny to try and calm the waters. So it is a huge loss for them, for both the party and the government.
Before we come back to the party, also just the other loss is on an international level. He is head of the Eurogroup, which is the group of European finance ministers, hugely influential role, and he also got to attend EU summits as a result of that. So we are losing a significant figure on the European stage here, aren't we?
Oh, big time. He knows every finance minister across Europe and I would imagine pretty much every Prime Minister, but not just knows them, he has their numbers. He can ring them up in a way that not very many ministers in even bigger countries could necessarily do. To be the head of the Eurogroup, okay, it mightn't mean a lot to us sitting here in Dublin on a wet Tuesday, but the reality is that he got back into that role when he shouldn't have. They bent the rules at one point to allow him continue. That's how respected he was. He ran for it again. He got people said, oh, he couldn't get elected again. He did without much trouble. So it is huge in terms of the how he was plugged into Europe, let's put it that way. And that'll be a loss because we don't have anyone that is as plugged into Europe as Pascal Donohoe was.
No, and it was actually a significant row in government over that as well. Michael McGrath taking over as Minister for Finance. He was due to go on the Eurogroup and Pascal was trying to keep the role and arguing he should stay as Minister for Finance. And McGrath saw that off and then the rules got bent to keep him in there. Argument as well there that actually Pascal Donohoe in that role helped us mitigate the heightening of our corporation tax rate because he was able to talk to the senior figures and grease the wheels there. So, right, with any significant politician, they get tributes are paid to them and then straight away it's right, who's replaced them? So so Fine Gael have got the Minister for Finance role for another 2 years. So that means somebody has to come in and deliver the next two budgets. Who's that? Yeah,
well, that's very interesting because that's where the story moves quickly. Pascal's gone, long live the king is dead. So if you look around the cabinet, and finance will have to go to somebody who's already in cabinet. So we're not going to have a parachute candidate that we're not familiar with here. What about one Simon Harris? He is the Taoiseach. He is, out of all those ministers now, with Pascal gone, the longest serving on the Fine Gael side of the deck. 2 years until he's Taoiseach again. He's in foreign affairs, which has been incredibly busy. It has him out of the country a bit. Could he decide that he wants to make himself the finance minister? I think it would come with big risks, but I wouldn't rule out that Simon Harris would want that for himself.
No, I think it'll be Simon Harris. I think he's going to want to be at the heart of the action. It's too big a job to turn down on this occasion, which then leads you to, knock on. So who then becomes Minister for Foreign Affairs, which, as you say, is another really big gig that Fine Gael hold.
You're now into the territory of a pretty big reshuffle on the Fine Gael side of cabinet. Who would take Foreign Affairs? Well, we're only less than a year into this government, actually, because it didn't form until January, even though we're exactly a year from the general election taking place. The likelihood is Helen McEntee. So she moves out of education into foreign affairs. She obviously was European minister before at the height of Brexit. She followed Leo Varadkar around holding umbrellas for him and the like at various doorsteps. That was controversial at the time, but she was a big part of that Brexit scenario. So she would seem like the obvious person to go into foreign affairs. That then means there's a gap in education. Look west, perhaps.
Yeah,
Hildegard Naughton's day might finally have come.
I don't see how Hildegard Naughton can be overlooked this time. She's been sitting as the Super Junior now across 3 reshuffles, basically. So she would step up there, which then creates a Super Junior role. There is a Dublin departure from cabinet with Pascal going. So therefore, are we looking at Neil Richmond, Emer Higgins, Colin Brophy maybe?
Yeah, so I think if that senior role goes to Hildegard from Galway, obviously, yeah, you're into Dublin, which basically gives you Emer Higgins or Colin Brophy or Neil Richmond. You would think Neil Richmond, but perhaps that's not the role for him this particular round, which brings you back to Emer Higgins and Colin Brophy. And if I had to make a call out of those two, I'm probably going to say Emer Higgins. Yeah,
so that is a big job as well, because that's Minister for Disability, which is, the government were telling us this was a major priority for them when they came back.
Well, the same cabinet today that has been hearing Pascal's resignation speech is also setting up some form of inquiry or tribunal into the treatment of children with disabilities. Yeah. It's a big problem for Simon Harris, that particular issue, so he needs someone he can trust.
Okay, so this time tomorrow or by the end of the week, we'll have Minister for Finance Simon Harris, we'll have Minister for Foreign Affairs Helen McEntee, we'll have Minister for Education Hildegard Naughton, and we'll have Minister for Disability somebody or other. Then that'll be a Super Junior role, a junior minister sitting at the cabinet table across a number of departments. Then a backbencher moves up to be junior minister. There's not too many backbenchers actually with any experience who aren't just in the door as TDs. And then another backbencher gets to become a committee chair. So there's, hooray, jobs all around as a result of Pascal's departure. How will this go down in Fianna Fáil, this departure?
I think there's not much Fianna Fáil can do about it except suck it up.
Yeah.
They've had their own problems in terms of stability in this government in recent weeks. So I don't think there's any sense.
Better the devil you know, though, isn't it?
Oh, I think they were happy enough with Pascal.
And a guy who isn't a populist, who isn't a fella who's chasing the next soundbite and like the dog chasing the car down the road, barking away at it.
Yeah, and of course you have the dynamic now of Simon Harris and Jack Chambers. Jack Chambers, of course, who is at, until recently at least, was the putative next leader of Fianna Fáil. So that dynamic will be quite interesting, because they're both young men gone into a role where sometimes people like slightly older men, and I don't mean that in any derogatory way, but you like to think that the man with the money is someone who has understood the good times and the bad times and is able to manage that. And in fairness, Pascal came into government in 2011 at the worst of times. So it will be an interesting dynamic. I think Micheál Martin will not be delighted if Simon Harris moves into finance, just because Simon Harris is much more chasing the microphone. Look at his comments on immigration in recent weeks. He says that, and suddenly the whole conversation becomes about immigration, and it moves in a different direction that maybe Fianna Fáil weren't prepared for. So it puts Simon Harris even more high profile than he is at the minute if he goes in there.
Yeah, and finance, it's not a soundbitey kind of job either. It is a job where if you say something, you can affect international markets. So Simon Harris is going to have to learn very quickly. He can't be just firing off whatever thoughts come into his head that he thinks is going to get him a headline.
It does shore up his position, though, as party leader, because he is now all powerful, and those below. It's one thing being party leader, but you're now Minister for Finance. All those other ministers have to come knocking on your door to ask you for money come budget time, come any time of the year, really. So it really would make his position all powerful in terms of where he is in Fine Gael.
Yeah, and you're negotiating the budget from the Fine Gael perspective, there is no buffer zone now of Pascal Donohoe being the one inside the Department of Finance. Here's an interesting one. 2027, so 2 years' time, Micheál Martin, if he's still Taoiseach, stands down as Taoiseach, or whoever the Fianna Fáil Taoiseach is at that point, stands down to become Taoiseach. And the Fine Gael leader, whoever that is at that time, becomes Taoiseach in the rotation for the final 2 years of the government. So assuming that's fine, Simon Harris, Fine Gael then take the public expenditure job, and then you've got a battle royale on the Fine Gael ranks to become public expenditure minister, because that's the big gig for the last 2 years, delivering the last two budgets. So that will also be interesting.
My God, Fionnán, we only broke this news in the last couple of hours, and now you want me to forecast 2 years ahead. But yes, I mean, the forming of that will also be the forming of the next Fine Gael leadership race. So we will assume, barring some unexpected scandal or twist, that Simon Harris is the next Taoiseach. Yeah. So that means he will go into a difficult election, you would imagine, after so many years of Fine Gael in power since 2011 at that point. Yeah. And Jennifer Carroll MacNeill would be clipping at the heels, has expressed
she's expressed an interest in an economic portfolio, hasn't she? Yeah. So Peter Burke will be an enterprise.
Peter Burke, who I mentioned.
And Helen McEntee will be the most experienced minister that they have.
And Helen McEntee is the deputy leader. So the three of them could be going at it, but I suspect Jennifer and Peter might be the ones to watch. Yeah. Maybe the elbows will come out long before that, because those jobs don't just... We know when those jobs are coming up, so there'll be plenty of time to lean into them.
Yeah. Is this a more significant departure from government than even Leo Varadkar 18 months ago?
I'd put it on a par. I don't know if it's more significant, perhaps to the working of government, but to the politics of government, perhaps not, because Pascal was steady Eddie. Leo's departure came as a total bolt from the blue. Nobody really saw that coming. I think we've already said that this maybe has been coming for a long time. Yeah. So, but it will be interesting to see. Like, Fianna Fáil are in a low place. They're really struggling after the presidential election. Fine Gael somewhat kind of managed to escape out from under that because Fianna Fáil were having such a disaster. So it's not a great moment for the government. And the problem they have now, Fionnán, of course, is there's two by-elections coming at them, one on the west coast and one on the east coast.
So that's where we're going next. So we're going to park stability, cohesion and confidence in the government, which Pascal Donohoe's departure does weaken all of those factors, and move to a more short-term issue. So Catherine Connolly, as a result of becoming elected as president, stood down 10 days ago as TD for Galway West. Paschal Donohoe will this week resign as TD for Dublin Central. So we're going to have two by-elections there within the next 6 months. They don't have to run them on the same day, but the argument will firmly be you got to run them on the same day.
Well, if the new Minister for Finance comes in and decides to set up two elections, which they bring their own cost, that would be a bad first move. So
we have a double by-election. Either side, largely urban constituencies. Galway West also takes in Connemara, so there's a big rural hinterland there too. Dublin Central is basically the north inner city suburbs, and two very different dynamics there. But nonetheless, you'll be measuring the parties' performances across both and seeing who had a good day or a bad day. Talk to me about Dublin Central then. Who were the runners and riders then for that by-election?
Well, who was the person who just missed out on the last seat in the general election this time last year? The one and only Monk. People may not have twigged this immediately with Pascal's departure, but could the Monk, who got 3,000 first preferences, re-emerge? I don't think so, is my gut, but watch that space.
Yeah, two things there. One is the bar in a by-election is so much higher because there's only one seat up for grabs.
It's not first past the post, but it's closer to it. Yeah, you have to have a big first preference.
Yeah, so where Jerry Hutch did very well across the constituency as a whole, you'd wonder, was he capped out at that, and could he rise further? And you could see the same thing happening, that everybody, he would just be beaten on transfers. The other issue is, and this goes back to reporting in the Sunday World and the Sunday Independent at the weekend, he's got a Criminal Assets Bureau bill coming at him. In order to take up a seat as a TD, you have to be tax compliant. So that will be an interesting dynamic there too. Apart from Jerry de Monk-Hutch, and there may well be an appetite for an independent, by the way, anyway. Who else would you be looking at in terms of candidates at the moment? Presumably Mary Fitzpatrick, Senator with Fianna Fáil, will yet again be running and seeking to win that seat.
Yes, of course, this is Bertie Ahern's old stomping ground. I don't see Bertie coming out of retirement for this. Nothing less than the Oris would do him.
Yeah.
So Mary Fitzpatrick, at short notice, which effectively this is the obvious candidate yet again for Fianna Fáil. Now,
2007, 2011, 2016, 2020, 2024.
2026.
2026, okay.
That's
that'll
where
be
we're
6.
going. So I don't see, I think Fianna Fáil have given up on that seat perhaps. Mary Fitzpatrick herself obviously puts in a lot of work there, but it just has never happened for her, and it's not going to happen for her this time either, unfortunately for her. Fine Gael have a ready-made candidate. That's perhaps unusual in a sense that, like, Pascal Donohoe for a long time was the sole flag bearer in this constituency, but Ray McAdam, who was his councillor, he was his parliamentary assistant, he's worked with him all the way through those years, is now Lord Mayor of Dublin. What better platform could you have?
And will be coming the by-election as well. He'll still be in the
He'll
office.
be there till next June. Yeah. So he has a perfect platform. He did incredibly well in the local elections last year. Big vote getter. His problem, of course, will be that presumably Pascal takes up his new job. He won't be allowed to be out campaigning.
Yeah.
So he's off the pitch in terms of going around endorsing his apprentice.
Yeah.
And then the other challenge is that obviously this is Dublin inner city constituency where in that with just one seat, it's very hard to see that Ray McAdam can trump all the other parties when transfers come into play to take that seat. So that brings you to Sinn Féin, who should win this by-election. This is Mary Lou MacDonald's constituency. Janice Boylan was her running mate in the local elections. Did all right, in the general election, did all right. Some would say she is not the best candidate, but you run Mary Lou MacDonald. So yes, she might be the candidate on the ballot paper, but you send Mary Lou out into the constituency to campaign for her for 2 months, 6 weeks, whatever the run-in is. They would expect to win the seat. Gary Gannon is the sitting Social Democrats, has a good vote as well. I'm not sure who they will run to try and get in a second Social Democrat there. I don't see it. And then just to throw in a few left field ones, Malachy Steenson is a local councillor here. So obviously if the immigration problems become a big part of this, he does have a decent vote. He got elected to the local council. Claire Daly was a parachute candidate. I don't see her trying that again. If it didn't work in a general election, hard to see it working in a by-election. And then, as one of my colleagues said to me, Fionnán, earlier, could Conor McGregor arrive into there if the Monk's not running? Of course he could.
Sinn Féin's to lose, so you'd say.
I think so. It's Mary Lou MacDonald's backyard. She hasn't been able to get that second seat, but this is the perfect opportunity to get somebody else into the Dáil. I imagine they will pump resources into getting that seat. Yeah,
because it is basically it's the north inner city, then pushing up into the suburbs of Drumcondra, of Stoneybatter, touch at Glasnevin, then over to Phibsborough, up to Cabra, out to the edge of kind of Castleknock. But predominantly it is primarily a working class constituency with middle class pockets.
Yeah, and it has changed actually a few times over the last few elections, and it has gone a little bit further into North Dublin, which actually helped the likes of Pascal Donohoe, because at one point he was clinging on to his seat. And now the last election he was obviously very comfortable, finished second behind Mary Lou MacDonald. But when it boils down to it, people think of this constituency as the north inner city, an area that has suffered from deprivation, that is working class, that has fantastic boxers and soccer players and all the rest of it. But when it comes to politics, have not necessarily felt represented by the government at times.
Yeah, we last had a by-election here best part of 20 years ago with the passing of Tony Gregory, and one of the candidates on that occasion was one Paschal Donohoe. It was his first run out in a national election. Obviously didn't get elected and was pretty much a kind of a no-hope candidate, but he saw it as being important to fly the flag. So it is.
The strange thing about Pascal is, so he got in 2011, which obviously was when Fianna Fáil collapsed. They lost their seat in that constituency, and he effectively took the seat. And he then built a really big personal vote. So Pascal became Pascal rather than Fine Gael or the government, and managed that quite well over the years. Very hard, I think, for someone else from Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael to come in and achieve that same personal vote. And certainly I see it very hard to do in a by-election.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Pascal Donohoe getting elected in 2011 under Enda Kenny. Pascal Donohoe was one of only 2 people in 2010 to know the result of the Fine Gael heave against Enda Kenny. He was secretary of the parliamentary party at the time, the young senator, Pádraig McCormack from Galway being the chair, and they are the only 2 people to know the exact results that came out on that occasion. And that was...
Well, do you know what's interesting about that? And I'll just pick up on a few on this. That's Pascal. That's my experience of Pascal. So people talk about ministers leaking things and gossiping and all the rest of it. It's not really how he operates. He's actually fairly straight with the media. He'll either tell you or he won't. If he thinks that it's something you should know and he wants to say, he'll say it. He doesn't really go around gossiping like some other ministers, and perhaps that's why he hasn't been in a lot of controversy over those years. I can only think of one real controversy where he ended up on the front pages for days, and that was over posters, if you recall. And did he declare help he got from a businessman in putting up posters as a proper election expense? That's the only time that I think he was really in controversy. That's not a small thing when you're the Minister for Finance and deeper for as long as he was, for over a decade. There's so many things you can fall on.
Significant roles now, going back, as you say, to 2030. He replaced, I remember the night well, Lucinda Creighton voted against the government on the first round of abortion legislation, and then Kenny basically, whatever way you want to put it, sacked her or forced her to resign that night. And Pascal was the next available. And remember, we were ringing Pascal that night and he was doing the whole humble, oh, do you really think it's going to be me? And yes, Pascal, we do think it's going to be you. And
Oliver Callan better watch it.
Yeah, he went up to become Minister for European Affairs and went on from there. So he'd been well regarded by everybody within the party over this time. And you know, people, he puts on this act of, you know, oh, I'm just little Pascal and sure I wouldn't harm anybody. Very sharp operator, great intellect.
Don't cross Pascal.
Yeah.
They know that. Other ministers know, don't cross Pascal, because while he has this perception of bubbly and friendly and it's all lovely and the world is wonderful and full of hope, if you cross Pascal, that he does have a reputation for, he will cut the legs from under you.
Yeah, well, he'll be doing that elsewhere now. He'll be heading to Washington, you know, where they know all about cutting the legs from people. Kevin Doyle, thank you for joining me.